this was decided.
You really think you can change the future?
All of this was decided.
The truth is what you see with your eyes, not what you hear.
Good tidings, ladies and gentlemen of the Lodge, and welcome back. Today, our souls still burn as we zero in on the SoulCalibur series and 7 more possible guest characters that could appear in the next installment. I made a video a while back talking about 7 candidates that could appear in SoulCalibur in the next game in the series. So if that interests you, make sure you head on over there and watch that video after this one, as of course, I won't be repeating any of the characters I've already named. But anyway, without further ado, allow me to list 7 more characters that I think have a good chance of appearing, and I'll lay out the reasons why I believe it's so. Starting with number 1, none other than the big bad Seph Off himself. Now, one thing worth considering is that Square Enix has made quite a cozy relationship with Bandai Namco when it comes particularly to guest characters. Let's recall that Noctis was in Tekken and that 2B was in SoulCalibur VI. We also have to consider Sephiroth's appearance in Smash Bros. Also developed by Bandai Namco. So again, seeing Square Enix cross over with Bandai Namco multiple times will always make some of their IP a good candidate to appear in the next game. But why Seph Off? Well, with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and the FF7 trilogy upon us now, Square Enix is going to look for ways to advertise their flagship trilogy to as many people as possible. For a lot of reasons, I believe that's why Seph Off came to Smash Bros., and I believe it's why he'll also have a good chance of appearing in SoulCalibur. Not to mention, his weapon and fight style would blend right in with the series. But anyway, that's Seph Off. I just think between Square Enix's cozy relationship with Bandai Namco and using their IPs in fighting games, and the prevalence that Final Fantasy VII and Seph Off carry with them these days, I just see it as a perfect fit and a potential outcome. And that's going to take us to our number 2 candidate, any Elden Ring or Dark Souls protagonist. For those who don't know, Bandai Namco is the publisher of these games, so it makes their eligibility far more likely. Especially when you consider that SoulCalibur, while it has a very passionate following, is one of Bandai Namco's more niche properties. Seeing the overwhelming success that Elden Ring has had of late, using one of their characters as a guest character in SoulCalibur could be a great way for Namco to get more eyes on their niche weapons 3D fighting game title. Now, with that said, that's going to take us to our number 3 candidate, and that's going to be none other than Zagreus from the highly critically acclaimed Supergiant Games classic, Hades. This was a release that took the entire gaming world by storm when it came out. We see just how easily Zagreus can blend into the world of SoulCalibur, not just in the spirit of mythological influence, but the use of weaponry as well. Personally, I also think the art style could be pretty cool to see him in a 3D render, but I also understand if that's something that may keep him out of the game as well. So yeah, Hades is definitely one of the more niche figures on this list, but I just thought with the mythological overlap, his use of weapons, and the way that game made some big waves a couple years back, I just think it would be a great fit. So let's move on to our next candidate, who is going to be Virgil from the Devil May Cry series. Again, for those of you who saw my first video, you know that Dante was one of my first picks to appear in this next game. But if Dante has a chance of appearing, then that tells you that Virgil's chances are pretty good too. Much like Hades before him, Virgil, between his mythological inspiration, his fighting style and use of weapon, among other things, make him a perfect candidate to maybe one day appear in the SoulCalibur series. But with Virgil out of the way, let's move on to our next candidate, or perhaps I should say candidates, and that's actually going to dive into the world of anime and take us to Edward and Alphonse Elric. Now, I have to admit, there is a lot of personal bias here, seeing as Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood is my favorite anime ever. But again, when we consider the cozy relationship Bandai Namco has with Square Enix, it of course always gives IPs like Full Metal Alchemist a good chance of appearing. This could work for Square Enix in the sense that it helps keep Full Metal Alchemist in the cultural zeitgeist, and it also could help SoulCalibur because, much like SoulCalibur, Full Metal Alchemist has a very passionate following. And the chance to play as Ed or Alphonse Elric in a fighting game like this might be too good of an opportunity to pass up. I mean, just imagine all the alchemical moves and movesets you could give Ed and Al. Think of the way their alchemical journey can overlap with characters like Ivy, who's an alchemist in her own right. Again, I think there are just so many ways that this can work out that I can't help but feel like they'd be a good fit. So this next candidate might be a bit of an outlier, but here we go. But I actually think Joker, or perhaps any other Persona protagonist, has a shot. Now, for starters, there's always a good chance because you know Atlus is milking the hell out of Persona 5. It is by far their most successful title in the company's history, so in a lot of ways you can't blame them. But seeing how they've been able to license out and use Joker as well as the Persona 5 brand in so many ways, I have to believe there's a pretty good chance he might end up in the world of SoulCalibur. His moveset certainly could be pretty interesting. It might make for a pretty interesting mechanic to get someone like Arsene involved. But anyway, out of everyone on this list, I think he's probably the least likely candidate. But again, seeing him pop up everywhere, we have to consider him as a possibility. So our 7th and final candidate is none other than Cloud Strife himself. Just to bring us full circle with Seph Off at the beginning, I think there's an equal if not greater chance for Cloud Strife to appear in SoulCalibur VII. This is especially noteworthy when you consider the rumor that he was supposed to be on the PlayStation version of SoulCalibur 2 and was subbed out for Hayachi last minute. Perhaps it was Cloud's destiny to be in SoulCalibur at some point, and maybe that point will be SoulCalibur 7. After all, the overlap with Final Fantasy VII can't be ignored. But again, I would just be retreading the whole Square Enix and Bandai Namco relationship at this point. You know why I figure Cloud is a good candidate. And honestly, between the Buster Sword and his moveset, I think he'd be an amazing fit. But with all of that said, ladies and gentlemen, please be sure to share what you think. What do you think of these 7 candidates I've laid out here today? And who are your personal 7 candidates to appear in the next installment? Make sure you check out my last video on this very topic. Subscribe to the channel as more SoulCalibur is certainly on the way. You, ladies and gentlemen, be good out there, be good to yourselves and each other, and I will see all of you beautiful sickos and normies next time.